cold water. For very short notice, very good attendance and special attendance. طيب، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. نرحب بكم في هذه الأمسية، ورغم الوقت القصير للإعلان عن المحاضرة، لكن ما شاء الله الحضور جيد ومن نوعية متميزة، فنشكركم على الحضور. محاضرنا هو البروفيسور بوغسلو زاغورسكي من بولندا، وسيتحدث عن الإسلام في بولندا على مدى 6 قرون، أو الثقافة الإسلامية والعربية في بولندا. والبروفيسور زاغورسكي من مواليد 1964، ويتقن العديد من اللغات. 46 لا صح صدق، لا لكن تاريخ الميلاد 46. هذا خطأي أنا، حتى أنا الذي ترجمت. يتقن اللغات العربية والبلغارية والإنجليزية والبولندية والروسية. وبدأ كما صدق سعادة السفير، بدأ حياته العملية أو التعليمية من سنة 64 إلى 69. قام بدراسات عربية وإسلامية بجامعة وارسو كتخصص رئيسي، ثم من 66 إلى 68 آثار البحر المتوسط بجامعة وارسو تخصص فرعي، وحصل على الماجستير في الدراسات الشرقية في مجال فقه اللغة بجامعة وارسو سنة 69. ومن 70 إلى 72 كان مساعدا في الدراسات التحضيرية في مركز الدراسات الأفريقية بجامعة وارسو أيضا. وفي 72 إلى 73 متدرب في الدراسات المغربية بكلية الآداب بجامعة وهران. و73 أمضى برنامجا صيفيا في اللغة العربية بمعهد برقيبة للغات الحية بتونس. ومن 74 إلى 75 دراسات بربرية في المعهد القومي للغات والحضارات الشرقية في جامعة باريس الخامسة بمعهد الدراسات العليا، كما أنه حضر دورة في الصحافة الحرة في المعهد الدنماركي للصحافة في الدنمارك. وأما حياته العملية فمنذ سنة 96 وهو باحث ومحاضر ومترجم ومؤلف، وتقلد العديد من المناصب. فمنذ عام 1991 أسس وهو مدير وصاحب معهد ابن خلدون، وهو معهد بحوث خاصة. ومن عام 2001 محاضر في الحضارة الإسلامية في كلية الحضارات في وارسو، وهو رئيس تحرير مجلة مصر الآلهة والفراعنة، وهي مجلة نصف شهرية من عام 2004 إلى 2007. ومنذ عام 1995 عضو خبير في هيئة الأسماء الجغرافية، وله عضويات علمية، عضو جمعية الصداقة العربية البولندية والرابطة الفرنسية للمستعربين، وعضو الرابطة الفرنسية للمستعربين منذ عام 47، وعضو الجمعية الجغرافية البولندية. وهو أيضا عضو في مجموعة الإسلام في أوروبا في المؤسسة الإسلامية Islamic Foundation في مدينة ليستر ببريطانيا، وله أكثر من 150 مادة ما بين مقالة وبحث ومساهمة في تحرير كتب وترجمات. والحقيقة أن سيرته الذاتية أحفل من هذا بكثير، وأعرف أنه ليس من حقي أن أعلق أو أتكلم، لكن نحسده أو يحسده الأساتذة في العالم العربي على هذه الفرص الكبيرة للبحث والدراسة في أماكن كثيرة. فليتفضل بتقديم محاضرتي. سأقوم ببعض الترجمة لأني أرى أن الغالبية هنا يعرفون اللغة الإنجليزية، لكن سأساهم في ترجمة موجزة لما يقدمه البروفيسور. تفضل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Thank you very much. Oh yeah, it's better like this. Sorry. Okay, I'll try with this. Perhaps it will work. I hope so. Well, Your Excellencies, dear gentlemen, dear guests, thank you for this opportunity of addressing to you. Thank you for the invitation to this center, which is renowned in the Arabic and Islamic world for its activities, and I feel very much privileged and honored with this presence and with opportunity to speak to you. I was invited to speak about the question of 600 years of existence of Islam in Poland. Why? First of all, it is just because Poland is the only European country, we should remember, where you can find indigenous population which has lived there for more than 600 years by now. Of course, you will say that, well, in Western Europe you find millions of Muslims living in France, Germany, Great Britain. Please remember, they are just new migrants who came there either for political reasons or for economical reasons, but they are just newcomers. Then the situation is quite different in Southern Europe, where you find a very big Islamic population in Serbia, Bosnia, in Greece, in Bulgaria. There it is the outcome and the result, the remains of the Ottoman Empire, which ruled over those territories, and the Muslim population is just that part of population which did not left their country when the Ottoman Empire had to leave it and give it independence. Whereas Poland has never been a part of any Islamic power, and has never been a rich country in modern times to the degree as to attract any significant number of economic migrants. So this is a very particular case, which you can not find in any other European countries. I underline once again. How come that Poland has this indigenous Islamic population, and how big is that group? First of all, if you look from today's perspective, it is a very tiny group. It is about 5,000 people. It is not more than that in this time. Still, it is a very specific group that retains their 600 years tradition. Those people, their ancestors, came to Poland first of all in the 13th century. You remember, it was the time of big changes in the political world on global scale. The empire of Genghis Khan reached the Middle East and Europe. You were facing trouble in 1258 when Baghdad was captured by the Mongols and razed to ground. We at the same time had similar problems with the Tatars, so-called Tatars. In fact, they were not Tatars, they were just called Tatars. They were Mongols. We should make distinction between Tatars and Mongols. Unfortunately, the name of the Tatars was prevalent in both in Arabic and in Latin sources at the time. So there is a terminological confusion which is perpetuating until now. So the Mongols came to Central Europe and came to the Middle East. They made the same devastating effect on the countries they invaded, but they had to withdraw. Especially from Poland, they withdrew and never came back. The empire of Genghis Khan, after his death, was divided into several big states. One of them was so-called Golden Horde, which comprised big territories in Eastern Europe and in Central Asia. That part was very quickly Islamized, and the people of the Golden Horde called themselves Tatars. It was a few generations later than the Mongol invasion into Europe. Those people were still splitting the Golden Horde into many tiny states which waged war each with other. There was the times and there was the place of the permanent civil war, permanent domestic war. People were killed, villages were burned, and many people were seeking refuge anywhere. Many of them came to Poland, which was comparatively close and which was comparatively peaceful at the time. Poland has just merged actually with the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and comprised the biggest territory of Europe. It was in fact the biggest state in Europe for many centuries. That it is not quite always remembered in the Western countries today. And the Tatars came to Poland seeking refuge, and they found asylum. They were granted privilege of settling down, making their villages, building their mosques, and setting up their families. Many of them came actually with their wives and children, but many of them came just alone. So they were again given privilege of taking local women for wives on certain conditions. So the intermixture with local population started and developed very quickly. Over a few generations, the Tatars who actually, when coming to Poland, were speaking various dialects of the Tatar or Turkic language. After mixing and due to those differences of languages, they started first to use Polish language in the public sphere, and then it swept very quickly into family use. So for last 300 years we do not have any evidence that the Tatars actually use any other language than Polish in this part of Europe. What happened with them in various aspects? The cultural aspect. They were fully Polonized. Well, this is oversimplification. Why? The Polish-Lithuanian state comprised several nations, several religions at a time. It created a big homogeneity. It created a common feeling of unity. It created a common state identity and national identity among people who were speaking various languages and professed different religions. It is a very interesting phenomenon that you should compare to the situation which is now starting to come in Europe with the European Union, which maybe in the future will gain its distinct, unique national identity. According to some hypotheses, maybe it will never gain it. Poland was a definitive case of such unique identity of people living in one state and speaking various languages, professing various religions. Tatars among them was just one of many, many elements, and that situation lasted for several centuries. There were, of course, little conflicts like with any national groups in any country. Still, nothing of the kind that could actually lead to breaking down this identity, and all conflicts could be resolved in peaceful manners. As to the everyday culture, it must be said that the coexistence of people of various nationalities and religions within one state provoked those people to create certain kind of common practices which were not necessarily reflecting basic ideology of any of them. What do I mean? I mean that in mixed families there was very widely adopted the tradition that if a father was a Catholic and a mother was Orthodox, sons in that family were Christian in the Catholic churches, and daughters in the family were Christian in the Orthodox churches, which helped to avoid any kind of dispute, because it was already regulated by the very sex of the given child. The parents, due to such overwhelming tradition, just didn't have to make a problem within the family. It was very clear and evident. Okay, my son will be Catholic, my daughter will be Orthodox. It doesn't matter. But if I am Orthodox, my sons will be Orthodox, and my daughters will be Catholic. But the same occurred in the mixed marriages between Muslims and non-Muslims. It is obviously breaking rule that, for example, Muslim ladies cannot marry non-Muslim men. Now it is absolutely not admitted in Muslim countries. But in Poland over the centuries, the Muslims have survived only by adopting the same rule as the other religious groups in the country. So we have many families which became out of such mixed marriages that still are wearing names of Islamic origin, and they preserve the tradition of being of Tatar descent, but now for many generations they have been either Catholic or Orthodox. On the other hand, that are Muslim families that are having usual Polish names, sometimes with long historical tradition, and everybody knows, well, this part of the family of so-and-so is Islamic, the other part of that family is Orthodox, the other part of that family is Catholic. In Polish setting, it was a general rule that was adopted by all people, despite that, in fact, it was against the rules of Islam, it was against the rules of Catholicism, and it was against the rules of the Orthodox. Still, that helped people to live together in peace and cooperation of all groups. Sorry, we break for the translation. Yes, I forgot about...
That's all right. بدأ أولا بشكر المركز على استضافته، وأن المركز له سمعة علمية كبيرة، وهو يعني يرى أن هذا التكريم له وتشريف. ثم بدأ الحديث عن المسلمين في أوروبا، وأن بولندا هي البلد الأوروبي الوحيد الذي عاش فيه مسلمون أصليون وليسوا مهاجرين، يعني لم يأتوا من بلاد إسلامية. وذكر عن وجود مسلمين أيضا أصليين في البوسنة وبلغاريا وصربيا، وأن هؤلاء لم يتركوا بلادهم عندما انتهى عهد الدولة العثمانية. ويسأل لماذا هذا الوجود الإسلامي في بولندا، وهذا العدد المسلمين في بولندا لا يتجاوز 5000 مسلم منذ 600 سنة. وذكر أن أجدادهم جاءوا إلى بولندا في القرن الثالث عشر. ثم تحدث عن إمبراطورية جنكيز خان ما يحدث من خلط بين التتار والمغول، وأن الحق أنهم هم المغول الذين هاجموا أواسط أوروبا ولم يكونوا تترا وإنما مغوليين، وكان قائدهم جنكيز خان، ثم بعد موته انقسمت حكومته، والتتر جاءوا إلى بولندا لاجئين وأنشأوا بيوتهم ومساجدهم. جاء بعضهم بأولادهم، وبعضهم تزوج من النساء البولنديات، فتكون يعني جيل مختلط. و300 سنة الأخيرة لا يوجد أي دليل على أنهم استخدموا أي لغة أخرى، فهم شعب يعيشون في بلد واحد بعرقيات مختلفة ولغات مختلفة. وذكر عن التمازج بين العرقيات واللغات في بولندا، وكيف أنه يتم بطريقة فريدة لم تحدث في البلاد الأخرى. وضرب المثال بالأسرة الكاثوليكية، أو إذا كان رجل كاثوليكي وتزوج امرأة من الأرثوذكس يكون الأبناء من دين يذهبون إلى كنيسة، والبنات يذهبون إلى كنيسة أخرى. وحتى وإن كان الإسلام لا يقر زواج المرأة المسلمة من نصراني أو من غير دينها، لكن مع الزمن مثل هذه الأمور حصلت، وهذا هو الذي ساعد على بقاء المسلمين والمحافظة عليهم. يعني وجدت ترتيبات خاصة ليست في بلاد أخرى.
Well, but let us come back to the Muslims themselves. The organization of the Muslims was absolutely independent of the state. They had their own imams that were nominated by themselves, by the Islamic local community. They had the Qadis that were nominated by themselves without any intervention from the state side. They had autonomy, legal autonomy in the matters concerned their religion and their family affairs. They had a right for free consultations across the border with the nearest Islamic states in case of necessity to solve any questions pertaining to Islamic religion or Islamic family code that could not be solved locally. It is an absolute evenement in the European states of the time that such privilege were granted to the local population. They built mosques, they set up local Islamic cemeteries, and lived in big dispersed among the local Christian, predominantly Christian population. What is interesting that this small group, which according to some statistics or rather estimations, still very much dispute, at the peak time reached something like 200,000 people. Well, that number is very much debated on. Now it is just 5,000. Those people developed their very special culture of their own. Why? They shifted from the Turkic Tatar languages to Polish. The religious books they brought first with themselves were copied locally in the Tatar language, but after some generations, no more people were to understand those books. Only a few of them remained who could read them and use them. So there was a necessity to translate them into the local language. So the Tatars started to translate them. But how? Not to the standard language of the country, but to the spoken language of their dwelling places. They discovered the Arabic alphabet as was used for Arabic, and they had it already for the Tatar dialects. Now they had to elaborate a new system of noting down the Polish language with the same characters. They did it. There were several systems elaborated by those, please remember, countrymen people living in complete dispersion among alien population. They created their own writing system for noting down Polish language of the time and writing down the religious books with religious prescriptions, with prayers, religious instruction, and edifying stories, stories translated from the Quran, and so on and so on and so on. This part of the Islamic heritage is still very little known and studied. Most of the books still remain in private property, and there are most cherished things within those families. People just don't want to get rid of those books. Very few of them actually are in any private collections and are available for the study. You can still, by those books available, say now completely new, set new perspectives for the study of the history of Polish language. The language of the country in the standard form was of course written over the centuries and printed without problems. You can detect through the evidence, through the analysis of the existing data, that perhaps yes, here and there, like in the Arab language, there was some local influence maybe of this dialect, that dialect, but the dialects as such have never been noted down because nobody wanted it. The standard language was a standard. The Islamic written monuments are the only factual evidence available now of the various stages of development of Polish language over the centuries in their eastern form, because the Tatars lived in eastern Poland. So now it is a unique source for the study of the history of Polish language, preserved only to the Polish Tatars.
تحدث عن المسلمين فقال أن المسلمين يعني مستقلون عن الدولة، فبإمكانهم اختيار أئمتهم دون تدخل، وهم أيضا مستقلون من الناحية القانونية، ولهم الحرية في استشارة أي مرجع إسلامي في بلد قريب من بولندا في القضايا التي لم يكن من الممكن حلها داخل بولندا، وهذا الحق مضمون للمواطنين في أوروبا. واستطاع المسلمون بناء مساجدهم ولهم مقابرهم الخاصة. وهناك يعني ليس هناك إحصائيات وإنما تقدير، ويصل تقدير عدد المسلمين إلى 5000. وذكر أنهم طوروا ثقافة خاصة بهم، فبدأوا من اللغات التترية التركية إلى اللغة البولندية، وكان هناك قليل منهم ممن تمسك باللغة التترية وترجموها إلى اللغات المحلية، وكتبوا اللغة البولندية بأحرف خاصة، ثم واخترعوا نظامهم الكتابي الخاص بهم لكتابة اللغة البولندية في مجال الدين، يعني في النصوص الدينية المقدسة عندهم والخاصة بعباداتهم. ومعظم هذه الكتابات كتب ما تزال موجودة لدى الأفراد، وهي متوفرة للبلاد للدراسة. ولغة البلاد التي كتبت على مر القرون يعني ليس هناك دليل على هذا التطور ما عدا في الآثار الإسلامية، فهي الدليل الوحيد الذي يمكن من خلاله دراسة تطور اللغة البولندية ودراسة تاريخ هذه اللغة.
كتبوا بحروف عربية
وكتبوا بحروف عربية أيضا.
Of course, if it was not clear, I will just repeat. The texts were written with Arabic letters, specially prepared and adjusted to the necessities of Polish phonetics of that time and to the local pronunciation. Sorry, I forgot about the mic. Which is even more astonishing, those village people managed to translate the whole of the Holy Quran into Polish language. That translation is still preserved only in manuscript form, and there are 4 copies of that translation known to exist. One of them is the National Library in Vilnius in Lithuania. Second of them is in the National Museum in Vilnius in Lithuania. Third of them is in the St. Petersburg Library of the Russian Academy of Sciences. It was probably grabbed in the 19th century by the Russian military people and preserved there. The 4th copy known to exist is in the private property of a Tatar family living in Minsk, the capital of today's Belarus. There are some saying that perhaps somewhere in Poland, in private property of the family which does not want to disclose that secret, there is a fifth copy existing somewhere, but that information has not been quite confirmed. It means that the translation which was executed according to first notices known about 200 years ago is still unstudied, is still unknown to the wide world, and still expects its a work on it, a big work on it, a very difficult work on it, of a big team of people. Why? It needs specialists in Arabic and Turkic language, because it is most probably that the translation was not done directly from Arabic, but through the intermediary of Turkic text. Then it needs specialists in the Polish language and in the Eastern Slavic languages for the question of intermixture of those dialects, local dialects. Sorry. No, Tatar. The question is still open, and none of the manuscripts have been studied so roughly, although they are known to exist in and could be available. It needs a creation of team of people and long time, financing of the project, which will bring probably very many unexpected discoveries over the history of theology. I mean, understanding of theological ideas by people speaking various languages, transmission of ideological mission through different linguistic channels, and how those theological principles were applied by the population, the comparative study, and the whole field of linguistic studies that will be connected with those texts. So, the problem is still open. Then came tragic times where, maybe you want to translate?
ما نسيته في الأول أنهم كتبوا اللغة البولندية بحرف عربي ليناسب النطق البولندي، ثم ذكر أن المدهش أن سكان القرى ترجموا النص القرآني، معاني النص القرآني كاملا إلى اللغة البولندية، وهناك عدة مخطوطات من هذه الترجمة، وذكر أماكن منها المتحف القومي في ليتوانيا، وفي الأكاديمية العلمية في سانت بطرسبرغ في روسيا، ونسخة في لدى عائلة تترية، وهناك نسخة خامسة لدى أسرة ما زالت لا تريد الكشف عن نفسها. ولا تزال هذه النسخة أو هذه الترجمة لم تخضع للدراسة، لأنها تحتاج إلى إمكانات خاصة، معرفة اللغة التركية واللغة البولندية ولغات شرقية سلافية. وما زال السؤال مفتوحا، وإن كانت هذه المخطوطات تحتاج إلى دراسة وتحتاج إلى تمويل، وعند دراستها ستكشف عن طريقة